HQ Kingston on your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM and also online at mykcr.org.
Hi, I'm Steve Thomas for Habitat for Humanity Restore. Habitat Restores are nonprofit home improvement stores and donation centers that sell new and gently used furniture, building materials, and appliances to the public at a fraction of the retail cost. The Ulster County Restore at 406 Route 28 in Kingston needs your donations. Call our hotline at 845-853-7499 to schedule your free pickup. And thanks.
We all play a role in keeping our community safe.
Every day, we move in and out of each other's busy lives.
It's easy to take for granted all the little moments that make up our everyday.
Some are good, others not so much.
But that's life.
It's when something doesn't seem quite right
that it's time to pay attention.
Because only you know what's not supposed to be in your everyday.
So protect your everyday.
If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
Hi, this is Jared Mans from the Spring Lake Fire Department, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
This programming is brought to you by the Friends of Kevin Cahill. As a strong advocate of local broadcasting, Assemblymember Cahill urges you to support Kingston Community Radio with your time and donations. Your contributions keep KCR vital and on the air at FM 92.5, AM 920, and on the web at mykcr.org. Please join Assemblymember Cahill and send your gifts of $10, $25, or more to Kingston Community Radio, Post Office Box 4364, Kingston, New York 12402. Together, let's keep KCR alive.
Thank you, Lawrence. Good morning, listeners. 331-9255 is our call-in number on this murky Wednesday morning.
It's cooler, though.
It is a little bit, yes. And in the studio here with me is Fred Costello, supervisor from the town of Saugerties. Good morning,
Good morning,
sir.
Greg. How are we doing?
We are doing. So I just happened to catch the Freeman here at the top of the front page, where town likely to allow pot shops.
We made the headlines?
It looks that way.
Yeah.
There's a nice little picture, mugshot of you.
That's not till next year, though, right? Because
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's an important topic to have now because when they adopted the law that legalized marijuana, they created a window between the Cannabis Bureau being set up to issue the licenses and for towns to take action as to whether or not they want to opt out or create zoning that would restrict and regulate how many shops can open.
And I'm sure tax revenue for Saugerties will be good on that because that's what it's a part of, right?
There'll be,
I mean, that's why they made the law legal.
Yep, we'll get, I think it's 3% of the sale as a revenue source. And I think for Saugerties, I don't know, there's folks that know it better than me, but I think it's probably worth $50,000 or $60,000 a year to us as a revenue stream. Yeah. Yep. So
in this day and age,
well, you know,
if it's $5,000 or $6,000, if it's $500 or $600,
we'll take it,
if
right.
it's $5-6.
Yeah. But with this window is an important component because the Cannabis Bureau will be set up according to the law early in 2022, and that will begin to issue licenses for locations that have been identified that will allow for dispensaries to be placed and also lounges. So communities that did not adopt the law by 2022 will be prohibited from adopting any regulations until 2023. So it's really important over the next 6 months that we try to do the best we can with this and get something on the books that will obviously allow it and also to restrict where it can go. And I think the things that are guiding us is we feel it should be in our highway and general business districts, and it shouldn't necessarily be in a neighborhood, and it shouldn't be in a situation where it's kind of hidden from view. It should be part of the business community, and folks that want to use it, it's a legal activity now, are welcome to go there. I think part of the motivation is that it will diminish the legacy markets that exist, we're not so naive to think that we don't have drug trafficking in our community, but creating a legal alternative hopefully will mitigate some of that traffic. And then there's the revenue. And we want to make sure that the locations that these places do end up at are sensitive to parts of the community that have children's activities, schools, churches, playgrounds, and things of that sort. So the cannabis law that they adopted did make concessions for distances and setbacks from schools and churches already. We might take the opportunity to expand on those farther. So it's an interesting thing, and there's a good precedent for us to follow. For folks that want to open a liquor store or a restaurant with a license, one of the considerations that the state liquor authority makes is that market being served and how large is that market? So if I wanted to open a liquor store next to a liquor store that you have, Greg, hypothetically, and your margins for volume suggest that another liquor store would not be successful or opening that would make yours unsuccessful, the SLA will use that as part of their decision not to issue the license. So I think that's an important component. If we had 10 dispensaries in Saugerties, I don't think they would be successful. I don't think our market is that large. Yeah. So by using the existing zoning and kind of modeling it after where the liquor stores ended up, I think we can get it about right. And that's what we're going to try to do. So it'll be interesting. And I think Saugerties actually, because we're a gateway, folks that are coming here, when they get off the thruway, they might be going to the Catskill Parks, they might be going skiing, they might be staying in Saugerties. So there's a lot of, and we know this well because we talk about it a lot, of tourist activity coming and going through Saugerties. So I think, as those folks get off their travels end by us and they get food and gas and perhaps alcohol, they might pick up their cannabis for the weekend as well.
A perfect example, and I think this is going to be his largest of the 3 weekends. Tom's already into his 3rd week of shows, starting today. Starts his third week of starts this week's, which is the 3rd in the series of spring meets. The population there, just from that facility alone, swells tremendously.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people are from out of the Saugerties area, in some cases out of state. You see a lot of out-of-state plates, out-of-state trailers. You go over to the RV park, and there's...
you think you're in Ocala Beach. There's Florida everywhere.
Yeah. And
that's interesting, too, because folks who participate in the horse circuit generally start their seasons in Florida, outside of Ocala, and then they migrate north as the weather permits, and then they'll go to Virginia, and then they'll come to us, and sometimes go to Lake Placid, and then they come back to Saugerties, and it's pretty exciting. It's interesting.
It is.
Interesting rhythm.
And there's some that's how they make a living, and they have a very successful financially because of obviously the horses they breed and the and many of these, especially younger riders. It's just it's amazing to watch how they treat a horse, how they maneuver a horse, and how the horse is able to jump. Those it's just quite
it's pretty impressive. Yeah. It's and I honestly, if that didn't come to our community, I probably would have never been exposed to it. But because,
equestrian, what the heck is equestrian?
Yeah.
But boy, it's a big time.
Pretty exciting
sport. It is.
It's very nuanced. I see a run, and before I knew better, I'm like, wow, that was great. And the next person in the chair next door, oh, they did this, and they lose. I'm like, what? So it's pretty interesting. So
how'd you like that, throwing that right on you the very first thing you walk in the door?
That's all right. I'm not surprised because Mr. Kirby was interviewing some local officials a few weeks ago about this. And it's interesting, too, when I speak with the other community leaders, everybody has a little bit different perspective. And I think I have talked to some residents who have expressed a concern about what they witnessed in Massachusetts. And I think that concern a little bit is unwarranted. When New York opens officially, the folks that live here and are going to Massachusetts, that will end that parade of people going to the dispensaries just across the border. I think geographically, those dispensaries for the past couple of years were benefiting from many folks in the Hudson Valley driving an hour and a half or so and going to buy their supplies. So when there are local opportunities to purchase those same supplies, I think people will stop doing that. And I don't see the stores here, the dispensaries here in Ulster County, having that type of volume that the dispensaries in Western Massachusetts have experienced, because there will be, people will be able to get it all throughout New York State. Not every community, but certainly within a 10 or 15 minute ride, which is what we do to get groceries. They could go get their cannabis supply. So I don't see it being that type of volume. I think the volume is going to be more in line with the liquor sales, the liquor stores, and it will kind of have a rhythm similar to that. And obviously at the very front side, when it's brand new and shiny, people are going to kind of flood the market, so to speak. And then I think it'll settle out and we'll find a rhythm very similar to what happens at the liquor stores. And historically, Sorgus has supported 3 or 4 liquor stores. And I think in the end, we will probably be able to support 2 or 3 dispensaries. And we are working closely with Village Mayor Murphy, because I think whatever restrictions they adopt could influence the locations of the stores that we would allow in Sorgus on the town side. I guess my point is, if there's a store by Price Chopper on Ulster Avenue, then the zoning restriction that the distance requirement we put in place after we adopt our local law would be influenced by that. So you couldn't have one within a certain number of feet from that store. That way they'll maintain that distancing. And I actually think by the Thruway is probably going to be the location that's most successful because of the gateway component.
Yeah.
It
makes all the sense in the world. I mean, let's face it, there are people that are headed further north on the Thruway that may stop. They may need fuel. There may be a favorite spot that they found while they were in Sorgus that they like to have breakfast or lunch at. Of course, you've got Starway directly across the Sorgus East, where coming from the south, you get off of there and you just shoot across the street and boom, you're in their parking lot. And then you've also got a couple of others, and then boom, just right around the corner, you're back onto the Thruway.
Yeah. So there's we know, especially after the effort we made to secure the traffic light on 32, that a high percentage of that traffic is not necessarily Sorgus traffic or people coming to Sorgus. There's a high percentage of folks that get off there and go to Woodstock, go to Tannersville, go to southern parts of Green, and it makes sense to get off there when you're traveling to those destinations. And the short-term vacation rental market and all of that all influences how that Thruway gateway is used. So it'll be it's going to be interesting though.
Yeah,
it's strange to when I was growing up, that was such a taboo. And it's a strange conversation to have about where they're going to be and who's going to be allowed to do it. The town, the local officials, we do not have say over who gets issued the cannabis licenses. That will go through a state agency that's being assembled as we speak.
So it's going to be very similar to the state liquor authority.
Very, very similar. So when you
that's good. That's the way.
Yeah, There's why reinvent the wheel? There's a proven model to how you can do this with regulated substances, and I think the model that we've employed for many, many years and have refined on a regular basis is the state liquor authority model, and I think that's the way to go. I think there's less understanding about what the lounges might look like and how that's going to be handled and regulated. There's I guess the only parallel might be cigar shops where you're allowed to smoke inside. But there's, I think depending on where you're going to do it, and certainly cannabis has a distinct aroma. If you're going to do that inside a building that's shared with other occupants, there's going to have to be some dedicated measures to make sure that the ventilation system and all those don't influence the other users of that building. I think that's going to be a little bit different conversation, and I'm not quite clear about what that might look like or how that might work, but the law did enable lounges, and it's reasonable to think that we might end up with one of those as well.
Boys, taking a step back, speaking about the throughway and the light, what a huge difference.
Right?
Oh, my. And then, of course, going with the cashless tolls, getting rid of the toll booths, opening that up, dual lanes. Wow, what a huge difference. And you just got to wonder why on earth it took so long, so many accidents to occur before this got put in place, because it's like night and day, Jekyll and Hyde.
Yep.
There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, and I look back on that a little bit, because now that it's done, it's like, wow, this is how it should have been for all those years. But when we were, going back to when Greg was supervisor and the efforts we began back then, we never had all the stakeholders in the room together until we got a little bit of help from the county, and they put together a study on our behalf. And when we had that study and the results of those studies, everybody was in the room, all the stakeholders, the New York State Thruway Authority, the DOT, the town, the fire district that takes care of that area, our police department, and stakeholders from other police agencies. And once we had everybody together, and one of the concerns that the Thruway had expressed was stacking. So their fear was that if a light was installed, that the traffic that was stopped by the light would back up onto the deceleration lane on the Thruway, creating a problem situation. And I'll remember the morning we were out there doing the visual documentation of what we would see. It almost like we planned it to happen. A couple tractor trailers got tied up and they were trying to turn left and they couldn't do it, and we watched it stack
onto the Thruway.
Yep.
I came off. It only happened to me once, but I'm sure it's happened other times. I think it was a Sunday coming down from Saratoga, and we came to a stop actually out on the ramp, out on the Thruway. So in other words, the lanes.
So the lines are behind. Yeah,
the lanes were the other two driving lanes were directly to the left of us. So we hadn't got around the bend where we were completely off the Thruway. But the same thing. There were a couple of larger trucks. And the fact that on a Sunday is probably one of the worst days.
High traffic day, yeah.
You have all the traffic coming down from Hunter, and the mountaintop, and they're all making a left. They all had to wait as other traffic coming from the opposite direction. So if anything, it was the opposite. And if that light is set properly, which I believe it is.
It is, yeah.
That is going to be a very, very rare occurrence. You'd have to have a tremendous amount of volume on the Thruway, and a lot of that volume getting off at the same time at Sorgetes West.
Yep. So once that was memorialized that it happened, they acknowledged, okay, we have to fix it. So that really broke, But you're correct.
So what'd you do? Pay 3 tractor trailer drivers?
It was so funny because sometimes just things break your way, and we're standing there having a conversation, and I was like, wow, look at that, and then another one and another one. I'm like, holy cow, there it is, and it was undeniable at that point.
Yeah.
And then technology helped us along as well. So once they agreed to do it, it was sent to the DOT and the Thruway for planning, and they had to put the wire in the road and the programming for the light. Well, it turns out technology has improved, and there's cameras they can install on the light, and that accelerated the installation because that wasn't really scheduled to be online till July. And we've benefited from that from about 4 months already.
That eliminates the wires in the ground, right?
The wires in the ground, yep. And the programming favors, so if there's an occurrence where their stacking begins of traffic exiting the Thruway, the programming will favor relieving those pressures and let those cars pass. And it'll stop the traffic on 32 going north and south to do it. And it works. It's, I don't think there's been an accident since. and there was a very high frequency of accidents at that location prior to, and unfortunately, a number of them are pretty serious. So yeah, a lot of, and we actually, DOT's been, I can find a lot of good things to say. There's an intersection down by me in Glasgow that's particularly problematic, and we would all like, us who live there, the residents, and the town has advocated for a traffic control signal, a light. And for now, the matrix does not support the installation of a light, and the DOT points to that matrix and says they're not going to do it. But we did persuade them to make a number of improvements. And one of the things that was just counterintuitive was, as you were heading south on 32 after exiting 9W, there was a passing lane right before a speed reduction in traffic. So, that's for a driver that doesn't know better, you're inviting people to speed as they're entering this dangerous intersection. And it seems silly, but
I didn't even realize that. That's news to me.
Yeah, so we were able to persuade them that obviously that did not make sense. So there's been a reduction of speed limit. There's no point where the speed goes up until you pass the intersection, and they eliminated that silly passing lane. And there's been some enhancements to the stop signs to improve the visibility. And we have one more request in to light the stop sign to make it much more apparent. But that seems to have helped a bit. There's still accidents at that intersection. There's a couple of spots where, sometimes there's a garbage can that gets left by the truck, and that causes a little bit of a visibility problem. That's a contributing factor, and that happens on both sides of the intersection. So folks that use that every day know we got to be extra cautious going through there, but folks that do not use it all the time, there's a pretty fair amount of unfortunate incidents there. And now that the speed has reduced, hopefully the seriousness of those accidents will go down as well. But it's certainly a step forward.
Now, did the state give any indication with the increase in traffic that inevitably is going to occur as a result of the what is the name
new
of the
hotel, the
development?
Wildwick, and then there's the project 60 or 70 housing units underway, and
that's the one down past Greco's on the left-hand side.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's being built out as we speak. I saw.
He's got a lot of equipment in there and a lot of bodies.
Yeah. So but now the flavor of that has changed. There's the mass construction. They're actually paving the roads inside there right now.
Are they?
And I saw a delivery of looks like a modular home that was delivered on site. It's all large boxes wrapped in plastic. So I imagine they're going to set that in the next week or two. And they'll be the first home in that back part of that development.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, no is the answer to your question, though. So, all the planning studies for the Wildwick Hotel and that particular development and the potential for development across the street were calculated in to the matrix, because that was one of the arguments that we made, saying that we have a problem now and it's likely to become significantly worse when all this new regular traffic is introduced. And so they added I don't know how they do it, but the traffic scientists have a way to add a factor into that. And when they added the factor in, they said even with the increase in the traffic that's identified in the potential new projects, that there still would not be the need for the light. Yes. Now, I think existing conditions in the future, when some of those projects are built out and underway, I think the frequency of accidents, the Glasgow Fire District patrols that or responds to the accidents there, and our police department, and they both do a great job recording the accident, and we can identify the seriousness of the accident. So the existing conditions at some point over the next 4 or 5 years might tell a different tale. And because of the compromises in visibility and some of the other stuff, I think even if the matrix does not support a traffic light, I don't think that conversation is going to end. I think, and it's heart-wrenching. There's families that live at that intersection, and, they'll see 6 or 8 accidents a year, and some of them are pretty serious, where people were injured and hurt, and there's a debris from the accident in the cars that were involved in their yards. It's just not normal for life experience. So it has improved, and we're grateful for the support we've gotten so far, and we're hopeful that we're going to be able to get the illuminated stop signs, and then it's going to be a wait and see. And but I don't expect this conversation to end. I think I get the matrix and I respect it, but academically and practically things sometimes land differently. And I think this is one of those instances where practically and the existing conditions are a little bit different than what the formula might be telling us. And there's things about line of sight and speed and how people use that intersection. I mean, there's a telephone pole right on the corner that creates that little gap in sight. So, if you're a regular user of that intersection, you have to look twice. But if you're having a bad day, even somebody who goes through it 2 times a day, you could overlook something. Sure. It's easy. A motorcycle could get completely out of sight because of that telephone pole and the gap that creates. And a small car, same thing. So, obviously tractor trailer would never be fully shielded by that gap, but it's a thing. But and the DOTs, they've done some good work in the village, so it's nice to see improvements. And once they're done, like you pointed out, you're just like, wow, I wish it was like this the whole time. We didn't, and we get a lot of folks on the 32 one. We get a lot of people who unanimously people are accepting and welcome it because we've all experienced or had someone go through there and have a problem. But we're not used to it yet. So I've had a number of people who live up there like, oh my God, I almost ran the light because I forgot it was there. But over the next few months, I think we'll all break that habit and get used to the light being there. And yep.
So before we get to the bottom of the hour, just want to throw out congrats to the Sorgady's
the girls
softball team. They advanced in the sectional play. Unfortunately, the Sawyer baseball team wasn't so successful, and we are hosting once again all 5 divisions of the sectional championships, AA, A, B, C, and D, this upcoming Saturday. And it's going to be weird not having Sorgady's or Kingston playing on main baseball.
Still fun for us to host that.
It is.
Congratulations to the boys, too. They put together a really nice season. And sometimes fate has a different plan. I was there for some of that game, and it just was never meant to be. Baseball is...
Wallkill came out fired.
They were ready to go.
Congrats to Wallkill also, and best of luck to them in the as they advance. And it's going to be quite a weekend. We got the Ulster Phillies tournament. First time that's ever happened, where the two have happened on the same weekend, and of course that was all a result of what would have been the parade for the Firemen's Convention.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are still doing some stuff where they're utilizing the large pavilion. So obviously, we had to move that tournament a week earlier. We could not go a week later, and the two of them fell on the same.
We'll figure it out.
Weekend.
Yeah,
but
great. Honestly, so I was up there 3 days in a row, and it just felt like it should have felt the whole time, especially after last year. You just appreciate it in a completely different way.
Sure, absolutely.
And, we tended it
People just want to get out. I mean, they just want to get out in the open air, and the weather's been great. I've already heard some people complain it's too hot, and I just tell them
very hot.
So what?
I know you love it.
You know what? Let me ask you something, or let me tell you something.
Okay.
Think about the weather in January, and it's never too hot.
I'm a skier though, and snowmobiler, so I don't mind the cold too much. I mean, I don't like sitting on a chairlift when it's minus 20. We went to Vermont this year, and I was like, God, this is a lot colder than New York skiing. I mean, you're higher up, and that was in March when we went. And I was like, God, it's freezing up here.
I could take this weather year round.
Greg, I like this summer. I mean, I lived in Florida for 8 years, but when it's like 95, and it's just unbearable with the humidity, like it was a couple of days Sunday last week was crazy hot, and I think Monday was like 97, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
I found yesterday.
Yesterday was nice.
In the morning, it was really humid.
Yeah, no, it was. I don't 80, 85 and right in there is fine, but when it gets into the upper 90s, I mean, it's just like.
I'm not going to complain once all summer.
No,
because
the summer goes too quick.
And the summer goes really fast.
Here we
I
are.
like the fall because of football, the leaves falling down,
it's beautiful.
The foliage, the
I
scenery.
love the fall, and I love the leaves falling down.
Right.
But after the leaves fall down, I don't like the
I go to
stuff
Florida.
that falls down after that. And with that, we're about ready to take a break. We are going to be back with Mike Oliveri at right after break, and then Kevin Cahill in the 8 to 9 o'clock hour. Listeners, we'll be back in a few.
You're listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM, and also online at mykcr.org.
100 years ago, there were 100,000 tigers in the wild. Today, there are as few as 3,200. The Earth's wild animals can't speak up when they need help, but we can. Be the voice for those who have no voice. Visit worldwildlife.org.
Everyone is talking about healthcare these days. America spends twice that of other developed countries on our healthcare system, yet our health ranks near the bottom. How can we stop spending so much and getting so little? By shifting to a system that gives more patients access to strong primary care. Primary care can help make America healthy again. To learn more about the benefits of primary care, visit www.healthisprimary.org. This message is brought to you by America's Family Physicians.
Screening exams for breast, lung, or colorectal cancers are necessary to detect and treat disease at its earliest, most curable stage. But you may have some concerns and questions. Answer your questions and ease your fears by visiting radiologyinfo.org. In addition to information on screening and wellness, you'll find more than 200 descriptions of radiologic exams, procedures, and treatments to help you prepare. Get informed and be prepared. Visit radiologyinfo.org, produced by the Radiological Society of North America and the American College of Radiology.
Hi, my name is Jackie Lovezzo. I'm from Lake Katrine, and I support Kingston Community Radio because it is an invaluable resource to the community and its residents.
This portion of Kingston Community Radio has been brought to you by the First Savings Bank in Ulster County that still remains local to this day. Ulster Savings Bank, a community bank that's invested in local business, invested in community, invested in you. Ulster Savings Bank, your one-stop resource for everything local. Locations throughout the Hudson Valley and online at ulstersavings.com. Member FDIC.
That's quiet.
All right, you're back. Thank you, Lawrence, and welcome back, listeners and viewers. I got to interject that.
That's right. We got our YouTube.
But we've got the YouTube back up and running after that storm a couple of weeks ago. And in the studio here is Mike Oliveri, who is, let's see, you're running in Ward 2?
Ward 7.
Ward 7. Okay, Lawrence said 2. I thought, okay.
What is Ward 7? What streets does that consist of?
Ward 7 is pretty much Flatbush all the way, not Flatbush itself, but from Flatbush all the way over to Hasbrook, 1st, 2nd, 3rd Avenue.
Okay, so like from the train tracks on Flatbush, like where it goes through the cemetery, and then that way.
Correct.
Okay.
And then I get Derenbacher is the other cutoff.
Dernbecker?
Yeah, and then I have Abbey over.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very large.
Yeah, Ward 7 is a pretty big.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I don't know why I said Ward 2. I'm sorry about that. I thought
That's
it was
okay.
Ward 2.
See, and I thought it was Ward 4. So if you took 4 and 2,
you add 4 and 2, and then add 1.
6.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we should have asked Fred. Maybe we could have came up with the right. That's what we should have done. We should have went right.
Common
here.
Core math. Yeah.
Yeah. I would have had no answer. I'm not familiar enough to know.
Plead the fifth.
Yeah, I would plead the fifth on that.
And also, Fred Costello is also here in the studio, supervisor from the town of Sorgetes.
Good morning.
331-9255 is our call-in number. We'd like to hear from you if you have anything, any questions, any concerns, any issues you want to bring to Mike Oliveri's attention or anything in general, please give us a call. This is a talk radio show, 331-9255.
As we were talking about the ward, I imagine that they're divided by population, not necessarily they're roughly equivalent in the number of people they represent. I wouldn't expect a variation in the size of the wards.
The ward is dominantly Democratic.
But do you know how many people does the ward represent?
About 1,600.
1,600, and that distribution is probably equal across all the wards.
About that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when you're closer to the inner city, you may have more dense areas.
You have
but
1,600 people in 8
ward
blocks versus
correct
the district you are hoping to represent, because there is some wooded areas, and it's a more distribution of single-family homes. There's not the density that would be consistent with the large apartment complex or anything like that.
Yep.
So
yeah, especially when you get onto like the other day, I was dropping off signs on First Avenue, and you have big gaps in between houses, and like you said before, heavily wooded areas in between.
Down there's actually not quite rural, but there is that kind of open space component.
Yes, tremendously. Yep.
Yeah, and it's kind of sort of a neat place to live because you're tucked away, but you're close to everything.
You're very close. Yeah.
I spent a lot of time actually when I was growing up on First Avenue, because I had in 3 in a row an aunt and an uncle, and then a grandmother and another uncle, and then the next house was another aunt and uncle.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's funny. I always, because your family has been in Sorority forever.
Right.
And,
it was on my mom's side, not on my father's side.
Okay.
On my father's side, it's always been in Sorority.
Interesting. Wow, pretty wild.
Yeah.
That's always been a tight-knit area. The folks that grew up there have these deep, long memories of experiences like you just described. And I had an aunt who lived down there, too, and it was a really tight community. Everybody looked out for each other.
They were basically, at the time, besides the 3 houses that my aunt and my uncle and my grandmother, right as you were standing on First Avenue, looking at the houses, to the left was another house. I think his name was Fisher. He was in the state police. But then you would go for a long, long stretch of just heavily wooded area. Across the street was heavily wooded. And then going the opposite way, you had to go a ways before you reached, there was I think it might have been High Street. Is High Street down there? Or there's a street that goes up, and there were no houses. So it was just basically those 4. And then behind that, there was a huge expanse of land, which I think
probably made it almost to the cement plant.
Yes. Yeah, going, what would be going north.
Mm-hmm.
But I know there was a huge expanse. I remember we used to get back in there, and then, of course, when we got a little bit older, and we had some dirt bikes and stuff, and or snowmobiles, and that's where I kept my snowmobile, when I had a snowmobile.
It's ironic to think about that, because now...
Back in the day.
Right. But back in the day, even when I was a kid, you could start snowmobiling certainly by mid-December, and the snow would be reliable through February, right through mid-February. And now, if you have a snowmobile, you're going to be looking at it a lot. You're not going to be riding it very much.
You were talking about earlier the close-knit community where your aunts and uncles live there. As someone who has really never stayed in the same place for that long, it always boggles my mind when I hear stories of that. We just had our backyard renovated, and it's been the talk of the neighborhood lately because everyone was trying to figure out what was going on, and I was
all the nosy bodies, right?
Yeah, but it's fine. It was cute. And then I was putting my yard sign in because the other day we were officially allowed to start putting yard signs up. And this sweet little old neighbor of mine, I see her looking around the corner and trying to get a sneak peek. And I'm like, would you like to come in the back and take a look at it? She's like, oh, thank you so much. And so she comes in the back and she's like, I remember playing here. And when I was a kid, she knew the guy who, we're the third owner of the house. So she knew the original owner of the house. She could tell, she was telling me things about this community. She's like, I've lived in that house, like 4 houses down from me my entire life. And it's just, it's heartwarming to hear those stories, and it's very odd for someone like me because being in foster care and everything else that I had to endure as a child to have those roots. And it's nice to now that I'm in a community where they do have those roots, and those people, your neighbors are your neighbors for life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exciting to be a part of it, and they all love the backyard that we created. We put patios in there, and it's just
no pool.
No pool. That's what the neighborhood wager was when they heard the jackhammering going on and everything else. They were like, "Oh, it's going to be a pool. It's going to be a pool." Maybe down the road we'd consider a pool.
If you get a jackhammer for a patio, that's a lot of jackhammer for a pool.
Yeah. But it was fun, and it's been a good segue for me for the people walking through the neighborhood to kind of talk and reintroduce myself, and they see the yard signs and they're like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I tell them about me and remind them about the election, and just to advise all the listeners right now for the Democratic primary, early voting starts this Saturday, and and the primary is June 22nd. So from
right around the bend.
Yep. And Ward 7 is the Midtown Center. That's where everyone can go and vote. And like I said, early voting starts this Saturday.
Where is early voting available?
At the Midtown Center.
At Midtown Center?
Yeah. So our voting location for Ward 7 and early voting is both at the Midtown Center.
We start early voting this weekend.
Yes, we do at the Greco Center. We have it on Saturday, then we have to take a pause on Sunday because we previously had reserved the facility for a wedding. And obviously with weddings, with invitations, sometimes we book them a year in advance. But other than that, then it goes right on through and up until the 21st, right?
Yeah, early voting's through the 21st, and
then
the actual primary is the 22nd.
The 22nd. So. And we had early voting for primary last year. We did not for the general election, but we've got it also for the general election this time. So people in the Sorgetes, Woodstock area, they got... obviously, for the Sorgetes residents, it's right in their backyard. Woodstock is just a stone's throw. And
I actually voted in the presidential in Woodstock.
Did you?
Mm-hmm. We did early voting. It was my daughter's first time voting, so it was kind of a big deal, and we wanted to do it together as a family. And with my schedule, that's not always easy. So we did it.
It's probably good that you did early voting, because if you didn't, you may not get the opportunity to vote. Or you would arrive at 9:02 p.m. and they would say, sorry.
Sorry, you missed your chance.
It used to be at the Glasgow Firehouse, not the early voting, but the general voting for Glasgow.
The general election will still be there.
Yeah, I remember going there like the second they opened one of the elections, and the line was out the door that early.
So one of the things early voting did is it reduced those lines quite a bit. And even during the presidential, usually there was that mad rush after dinner of people coming out to vote. But I brought some food to the poll watchers, and it was steady, but it was not overwhelming at all because so many people had voted in advance.
That's not considered bribing?
No, I was not on the ballot that year.
Okay.
So I was...
See, and I'm one of those, nutcases, and I am a nutcase. He can vouch for that. That I would vote at 8:20 in the evening, and the reason I would do that, it's usually the dinner crowd is gone, and I could see. I would ask the election workers how many people had voted. So I always used to keep a track how many, see what kind of a turnout there would be.
And that is an interesting exercise because by volume, you can make some predictions just strictly on that. So if in an uncontested race, there will be a certain percentage of folks that will come out, and depending on who they were, you can make a fair prediction about how they may have voted. Then, if it's a very high turnout, you could also make some predictions about that. And if it's folks that don't generally vote, whatever the kind of theme of the campaign might be, it's likely that they were voting in that vein. So it's a curious thing, and like you just described, Larry Thornton, he could almost call an election by how two districts would do in the village.
Yeah,
sure. He could predict. There was a plurality. One district favored Republican conservative candidates, and one district favored Democratic candidates. And when he knew the outcome of those two districts, he would make some, and 9 times out of 10, he was pretty much right on.
You could also make that same analysis with Glasgow.
To a degree, you could. Yeah. To a degree, you could. Yeah, it's traditionally a Republican conservative area, but for Republican candidates to be successful, they have to motivate a certain number of folks to come out.
Oh, of course.
And if they don't hit that volume of voters, it's not likely that those candidates will be successful. If they hit it, then you could predict that the competing candidates are not likely to be successful. So it's amazing how much, and obviously with big data and the way national elections have changed, the observations we're making locally, they've been able to compile all that data, and they can make those observations across the country fairly quickly. And data like that is what drives news organizations to make predictions. So when they're calling New York State or they're calling Tennessee for an election, this type of data is what they're using to make those predictions, and 9 times out of 10 they're right on.
Very accurate with that.
Yep.
I remember seeing some of the, with the presidential elections, you'd see, they gave it to this candidate, and it's like, well, there's still 6 hours of voting, and you're like, how is that possible? And sure enough, it went exactly how you said. The data is amazing.
Extraordinary. Yeah.
And I'm curious with always the topics, because when I first started gathering signatures for my campaign, the focus was more on improving the infrastructure, and there was a little concern about the crime rates and everything going on. But as everyone has heard and read, and there's been an increase in gun violence lately, and I've started calling people with my team to remind and knock on doors to just remind people, hey, early voting is starting soon, and to still get a pulse of everyone. And the shift has definitely
manifested
come back towards safety. And I saw that, and my campaign slogan is Safer Streets, Better Kingston. And we're seeing that now where, like I said, we did a lot of phone banking yesterday to talk to a lot of people, and luckily a lot of them picked up. So I was able to engage with a lot of people throughout the community. And by far, the uptick in gunshots and gun violence and all this has become a big concern for people. And that is definitely something that needs to be addressed. And that's one of the things that I'm definitely going to bring up with my campaign, and if and when I do make the Common Council.
I think that's an extraordinarily relevant issue, obviously, for folks who live in Kingston, especially in neighborhoods where this violence is taking place. That's a concern at the forefront of their thought. But it's not normal for any of our communities in Ulster County. So to the degree that it creates concern in neighboring communities, Saugerties, Ulster, Woodstock, and Hurley, that's a factor as well.
Of course.
And I think we're not accustomed to it. And the news doesn't alleviate our concern, because there's been a significant uptick in violence across the country. And I think that's unsettled us as residents in a way we don't fully understand yet, but it's definitely, I think, at the forefront of all our thought. And we've had a luxury over the last 25 years or so where crime rates were at historic lows. Mm-hmm. And we're all hopeful, I think, that this is just a trend and an anomaly, but it may not be.
Yeah.
And I think if it's not, that's going to change the way we all think, work, live, travel. There has been anomalies, but we've been on a fairly good run of historic low crime rates, especially violent crimes.
Yeah.
And that's definitely changing now.
And I think you see it, as you were talking about, the media brings it up on a national level. I think the unfortunate mindset a lot of the times is when you hear about, okay, well, there was 200 shootings in Chicago last month, or, this happened in Arizona, this happened in California. And in the back of your mind, you're like, okay. And then you hear about the stuff in New York City. And then you kind of pay a little more attention because it's New York City. And now, like you said, people in Saugerties, Woodstock, those outlying areas, the closer it gets, the more you kind of perk up, and you're like, okay, well, wait a minute. First it was out there, now it's in the city, now stuff is happening in Kingston, it's getting closer, so there's more concern about it. And I think that's what we're seeing now. Even, my pulse of the community in Ward 7, like, people are obviously more concerned about what's going on because it is getting closer and closer to home.
Well, also, just being a stone's throw, and let's face it, an hour and a half down the road, you're without traffic, of course. You're in the metropolitan area, you're in the city, and there is a big influx of people that come into our area from the city and the metropolitan area.
Yeah, my the house next to us just sold, and it's a lovely couple who are both, they're both from Manhattan, and this is now going to be their permanent resident. One is going to live here by himself until October, and then the other one will come up after that, and this is going to be their full-time thing. And, you know, as the real estate data has shown, you know, what was it? Kingston was number 2 for people moving, you know, up from the city.
Yeah.
You know, as you said, an hour and a half on a good day, and what COVID taught us is we have a lot of people who can work from home. So, you know, they don't want to pay $3,000 a month for a studio.
And I think you're gonna see a lot more of that, where it's, you know, prior to the pandemic, people could work from off-site. They just never took advantage of it, maybe never realized it. And now I know 2 families right on the Malden Turnpike where I live, and one that's kind of diagonally across from me, actually next to some property I used to own that I sold, from Jersey. They used to work in the city, and now they do most of the work virtually. Maybe once a week they'll go into the office, but for the most part, and they purchased that house, and they work virtually.
Yep. And you're like I said, I mean, the influx of people moving into the area tells you, and it perfectly coincides with COVID. You know, people found out, oh, hey, I can work from home, or I do only have to commute 1 day a week. You know, I'm sure there would be a lot of people that were like, okay, well, if I only had to commute to the city or jump on a train 1 day a week, that's not as bad as, you know, that commute every single day.
Yeah. I have a 2-minute commute, and sometimes I find that long. Yeah. If I had to go
that's about the length of my commute. About 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's 5 minutes for me, 4 minutes if I don't catch one of the lights on Greenkill. So
it's a big difference. It's 25% change in your time.
Yeah.
I say that when HITS is going, it could be 3 times as long.
You have to cut a path.
Yeah.
You could take a gator from your house to the complex.
You know, believe it or not, there used to be because when I used to hunt, there used to be a path
that would connect
that kind of was maintained, and Adams, I don't know if you recognize that name, the owner of the house on the 9W, owned a lot of property behind there, swung all the way over to where Cliff Tinkin now is, Jehovah's Witness. Mm-hmm. They maintained some paths. They cut them back there. They were deer runs, and you could almost do it right to where the.
So it would come out by Simulades, where Simulades is, right?
No, the opposite.
The opposite.
The opposite way. We'd go south and come out near where Cliff Tinkin.
We'd come out there, right before the creek.
Yeah.
Wow. So, well, now there's all houses through there, so it'd be impossible.
Right.
That's similar to what we used to do when we were young. You could leave Glasgow and go north or south through the woods for a fairly long way. We used to be able to get to the Rhinecliff Bridge and really not disturb anyone. But then as the housing expanded, you know, neighbors didn't exactly welcome us coming through on our ATVs.
Yeah.
Driving across their newly planted lawns. So
it was some of the bike paths on 209. Like when you get closer to High Falls, you are in people's backyards, and it's really weird.
It's kind of strange.
It's very strange. Like I think right before you get to I forget the crossroad, but you're in somebody's backyard, and like when I rode the path, I'm like, this just feels wrong to be.
You feel like you're violating.
Yeah, I'm like, I feel like, you know, there's a no trespassing sign that I missed somewhere because you are in their backyard.
Wow.
Yeah,
but those paths are great though.
Yeah, it's a beautiful path.
And you know, I look with some envy because we're not connected in Sargreaves to those. But you know, if you go down here to Rockwell Lane, you can drive right into the Walk Hill Valley on a bike.
Mm-hmm.
And it's and there's a lot of spots to pull off along the way. I think now it's connected to the walkway over the Hudson, and out that way, that path is really expansive out through LaGrange in those areas.
Oh yeah.
So it's really impressive.
Yeah, that's still that's still troubling that we got left out of that.
I get as we're talking about it, I feel my blood pressure going up. I feel offended.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good word, offended. Yeah.
But one of the across the Rhinecliff Bridge.
Other pieces of exciting news. I got married.
Oh, congratulations!
Congratulations! That's right. The last time you were on, you were. Yep. I remember that.
Yep. We went up to the Finger Lakes. It was beautiful. The weather. It was absolutely terrible on Friday. Saturday morning was no better, but about noon, the rain stopped. So we didn't have. I mean, we were supposed to do it at sunset, so we had the sun and the water reflecting, but it was pretty gray skies at that point. But it was still a nice, beautiful ceremony, and
That's a beautiful area up
It was
there.
great. Yeah, we loved it, and it was just.
When was the wedding? Memorial Day weekend?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. That was actually the weather, the further north you went,
was better,
was
right?
better than what we experienced.
And I heard.
That was a bone-chilling, rainy weekend.
Yes, it was.
It was cold.
Yep, but
it
it
certainly
was,
didn't feel like Memorial Day.
No.
But Sunday and Monday had to be good up there.
Yes, it was. Yeah, Sunday and Monday we did our wine tours.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah, got a tour of the wine country, stopped at different places, and it was a blast. And we had our friends with us. It was just a really good time overall. Yeah.
Modest in size, you didn't have 100 people.
No, there was 19, including a 7-year-old.
Perfect.
So.
Yeah, you could actually enjoy everyone.
Exactly, and that's what it was. You know, we had the reception we exchanged our vows at the restaurant, and then we went inside, had dinner as a group, and it was a fun, great time with our friends. And then in November we're going to have the actual reception where we can have friends and family come up, and we live streamed it because there was a lot of people that weren't able to come up, or like my wife's grandmother is 96 years old, so she wasn't going to travel up to the Finger Lakes. So, they put it on the TV, live cast it, and she was able to watch the whole thing with us.
A very nice, quaint ceremony, and save you several tens of thousands of dollars,
yes.
I'm sure. Well, you hear these young couples that will hold these big weddings with a lot of people at, some pretty fancy venues, and end up spending $35,000 for a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
You stop and think, wow, man, you put what a great down payment on a house.
Oh, yeah.
And especially the way the housing market is with first-time buyers trying to buy homes in just the way the real estate market is.
Yeah, and I've gone, my brother is very well off, and his wedding was in the six figures.
In the six figures?
Yes.
Okay.
And I've been to a $200 backyard wedding, and I had more fun at the backyard wedding because it was laid back, everyone was relaxed, everyone was having a good time. Like, my brother's wedding was beautiful, but you just felt like you had to be on your best behavior at something that...
And with that many people, how do you it's impossible to try to interact with.
Oh, yeah, you can't enjoy
all
it.
of them.
You
Where
have
with
to-
what you did, and I think you alluded to it, you were able to.
Mm-hmm.
You were able to.
Yeah.
And I think that also leads to the enjoyment. And I could tell by the expressions on your face, you had a very, very nice.
Oh yeah, it
very
was
nice
it was
time.
so fun. We obviously wrote our own vows, and a friend of ours got ordained just because he wanted to be the one to do it, and he added his humor and charm into it, and like we're laughing. It was just a good time the entire time we were there.
Good
and
for you.
I'm blessed. I have a great wife who's been supporting me through everything. She's when I decided to get into politics, I asked her, I was like, are you going to be okay with this? Is this something you're on board with? And the first thing she said is, do I have to give any speeches or anything? And I said, no. I was like, we're not at that level. And she goes, I'm fine. So, yeah, I got a good one by my side.
Yeah,
sure.
that's important because there are some people, spouses, that they want nothing to do with their spouse running for office, getting involved with politics, and you have to have that support.
Oh yeah, and I'm very blessed to
It's
have
hard
that.
for me to persuade Kim to come out to breakfast with me because if we go in the village, inevitably someone's going to come to the table with a concern, and she has a tolerance for it, but sometimes she doesn't want to be bothered with that.
Sure.
Well, that's the other thing. When you're a political figure, you're going to
You're always
get
on.
bombarded with stuff, constantly. Even if you really don't have any control. Well, what about at Delgado's town hall meeting with the lady that
Hecklers.
pestered with Israel and wouldn't let up?
Yeah.
And I just
Well, I think it was funny. I had someone reach out to me, not even a Ward 7 resident. I believe she lives in Ward 2 or 3, but she reached out to me for help on stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. I'm not even elected yet, And I have people reaching out to me and saying, hey, can you help? And so I made a phone call and I got back to her and I said, listen, I addressed her concerns. She was, thank you so much for that. And, granted it's in the beginning, but as you said, I'm sure there'll be times where I'll be sitting and someone will be like, hey, by the way, now that I have your ear.
And stuff like that goes a long way with public relations. Mm-hmm. Long, long way.
Well, I've learned, it's always about communication. Doing whatever you can do. And, when I do my motivational speeches, and I think I touched on this last time, the very last slide I have is my contact information. And I tell people, I may not always get back to you right away, but I promise you I'll get back to you. And that's the same thing that I've when I've not gone door to door, when I've called people, I tell them, I will always get back to you. It may not be right away, and I may not give you the answer you want to hear, but I will always get back to you. And that has seemed to go a long way of, that assurance that, listen, my opinion and what my concern will be heard. And, I even acknowledge, listen, I may not be able to give you the answer you want to hear, but I'm not just going to ignore it and just let it sit by the wayside. I'm actually going to address it one way or the other.
I've been that way all my life. And, maybe it might take 24 hours, but I always think it's very, very important, whether you're in political office or not, you get back to people. Yeah. Because what does that project if you don't?
Exactly.
Well, that guy's blowing me off.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mike Oliveri, unfortunately, we are out of time. That half hour just flew by.
Yep.
Thanks for taking time out of your busy day.
Thank you. And if anybody wants to find some more information about me, my Facebook address is, it's facebook.com, and it's Mike, 4, Ward, 7. So Mike 4, Ward 7.
Gotcha.
That's cute.
Yeah. And then my website is maoinspires.com. And then there's a link there for aldermen. So people can read my biography about what I do for the motivational speaking, as well as what I'm doing for the residents of Ward 7 in the city of Kingston.
So very easy and very simple for people to find out all about you and also to contact you. All right, Lawrence, listeners, we'll be back, viewers, in a few.
You're listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM, and also online at mykcr.org.
Question: what will you find on all over-the-counter or OTC medicine packages to help you choose the right drug and use it safely? The answer: the Drug Facts label. This label lists the medicine's active ingredients and purpose, how much to take, and warnings you should know before using it. Remember, even OTC medicines you buy without a prescription can cause side effects you don't want. So follow the information listed on the Drug Facts label. For more information, visit fda.gov/Drug Facts label. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Introducing the YMCA. Sure, you know the Y for a swim or a game of hoops, but we're more than that. We're a cause. When you take a jump shot at the Y, someone else is getting job training. Practice yoga as a team practices her leadership skills. We give people of all ages, incomes, and backgrounds a chance to learn, grow, and thrive. So while you might think of the Y as the place for lifting weights, we're also about lifting entire communities. That's the Y. We're so much more. Visit ymca.net/more.
At St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, we're fighting against childhood cancer every day. At the heart of this battle are our donors.
Most of us want to make some type of difference in the lives of others. St. Jude does miraculous work.
The fact that no one has to pay, it's a place where everyone is treated as an equal.
Everybody is welcome here. And it doesn't matter your religion or what part of the world you're from, all that is taken away. It just gives you some hope.
It's just a nice feeling to put your energy into something that really does genuinely make a difference in a child's life.
There's just no greater gift. If we have the ability to help, then we have a responsibility to help.
Finding cures, saving children. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Find out how you can help at stjude.org.
Hi, this is Tony Marmo from Norman Staffing, and we've been bringing together employers and job seekers since 1980. If you're an employer and have job vacancies, let Norman Staffing help fill them with permanent or temporary workers. We screen, interview, and recommend the best candidates for your company. We make the employment process easier and faster for you. Please call Norman Staffing for your employment needs at 338-9111, 338-9111, or normanstaffing.com.
this is Winnie from the Rosendale Seniors, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
Rondout Savings Bank has a long history of serving local communities and maintaining a strong tradition of customer service excellence while providing each customer with the personal attention they deserve. Rondout Savings' approach to community banking puts you and the growth of your business in the front of everything they do. They're a different kind of bank and would like to tell you why, so please reach out to one of their expert business bankers for an appointment and let them show you what they can do for you. Rondout Savings Bank, always working for you and the community with branches in Kingston, West Hurley, and Hyde Park. Also online at rondoutbank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Thank you, Lawrence, and welcome back, listeners and viewers who have been with us. Those just joining us, 331-9255 is our call-in number. In the studio here with me is Fred Costello, supervisor from the town of Sorgetes.
Good morning.
And we are expecting Kevin Cahill shortly, but before that, we do have birthdays. We went 2 weeks in a row without, here's another one you can do. I'll let you do those, and I'll do this one here. So why don't you lead us off?
This is very fine print, Greg.
Well, I'm sorry.
Okay. We have, please wish Ryan Sager a very special birthday on Wednesday, June 9th, and this is from your family. So happy birthday, Ryan.
And I've got one here. Happy birthday, Lucy Stajic. Love, your family, and card-playing friends. Have a wonderful day.
And I also have a happy birthday. We would like to wish a happy birthday to Amanda Leonardo from your friends at work. So happy birthday, Amanda, from your friends and us.
Now, didn't you have 3?
Yeah, but it's a duplicate.
But, okay.
It's exactly a duplicate. Ryan's
also
yeah, we have actually Ryan's family's really looking out for him. They did an email and a handwritten note. So you are loved, Ryan. Congratulations and have a happy birthday.
So this was great that we've got this many birthdays for today. And today's winner of the famous cow pie is Lucy Stajic.
Happy birthday.
Lucy, congratulations. Happy birthday. When you get the opportunity, get down to Boyce Dairy Milk House, 62 O'Neill Street, right here in Kingston, New York. Pick up your famous cow pie, which is courtesy of Boyce Dairy Milk House and Kingston Community Radio. Lucy, have yourself an awesome day, making it an enjoyable, fun day. And again, congratulations and happy birthday. Listeners, this was great. We had several here today. Please continue to send in the birthdays and the anniversaries. It's very easy to do. You can email to kcr921@gmail.com. You can postal mail to KCR at P.O. Box 4364, Kingston, New York 12402.
That's Sorgetes resident.
Yes.
They're a retired teacher, heavily involved with LifeSpring, and her son is a newscaster for the Weather Channel.
Yes, and he has been for quite a number of years.
Good family. Had the pleasure of growing up with Ray and his sister, and a lot of great memories. And it's nice to see them be successful. His daughter just graduated, which is a pretty big deal.
Oh, Ray Jr.'s?
Yep.
Oh,
so
that is good.
Yeah, a lot of good news there. So happy birthday. And
Thank you, sir.
About to welcome our morning guest. And I guess we're not going to be on diets today. That looks great.
I'm not touching that. One of them's going to you-know-who.
To Terry?
To Terry, yes.
Yay.
And by the way, listeners, viewers, Assemblyman Kevin Cahill just walked in the door with breakfast treats. And Terry wanted me to relay to you, Assemblyman, that she does appreciate every second, the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month, the goodies that you bring for her.
But she wishes I would wait till after the summer's over, right?
I don't know.
No.
She just got back from California. I think she came back today because she knew that you were going to be on the air with us.
There you go.
Yeah.
Came back to me.
Exactly.
I think she's coming to work today.
So today we have.
Yeah, I think, yeah. She
Today-
was away from the 8th. I got her auto responses.
Yeah, she's visiting her son, and it looks like they had a great trip, and hopefully she's rested. And
Now Lisa's out there, right?
Lisa's out there because she's celebrating another grandchild, which is really cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So the treats today from Colleen, let's see what she said. Lawrence picked the blueberry muffin. There were several muffins available. I decided blueberry just in case nobody picked it, then I would bring it home and then I would eat it. And you get a cinnamon bun, like a swirl.
Yeah, delicious looking.
Apple turnover, this apple thing. What do you?
Oh,
what'd you
wow,
call it?
yeah, I see that now.
Yeah. So they all sounded good. She had a coffee cake, but it wasn't quite cooled off enough to bring to you guys.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
I tell you, Kelly from the Market Basket, she's not playing games.
she's not playing games.
She makes really good corned beef too on St. Patrick's Day. She's not messing around.
Here's her complaint right now. This is the best complaint anybody could have. She's too busy.
Good for her. Yeah.
Do you know how many business owners have told me that?
Yeah.
I went into Smith's Hardware on Monday in the middle of the day. You think it was a Saturday? It was, and Rick and Sharon have hired additional staffing, but I mean, it is just so great to see, and it's great to see that. I think more and more people over time, just with the constant marketing and advertising of the importance of shopping local and supporting your small mom and pop businesses, have got it.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's also pent-up demand. I mean, certainly people spent the last year fixing up their houses. We know that from the stock of hardware stores and the big box hardware stores. Of course, they said one of them said they went up 20% last year. We know it from the price of lumber, between other issues that are causing lumber to go up and the fact that everybody was using it over the last year for the projects they've been putting off for 20 years. But now there's getting back to day-to-day life, and people are looking to do things to do that. And I'll tell you, I was in Hannaford the other day, unmasked for the first time since February of 2020.
It feels liberating, though, doesn't it?
Well, I felt a little self-conscious. I was the only one. And I was like, God, I wish I had my mask, And I said to the woman at the checkout counter, I said, I feel guilty. I looked around and so many people still have their mask on, and I hope that they don't think I'm insulting them in any way. And that's really what it's come down to. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to decide today between working from my dining room table for the second to the last day of session or actually going to Albany for the second to the last day of session. There's reasons to do both. But the reason against going to Albany is it's mask all day. And the nights we've been meeting until about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So the idea of sitting there with a mask from 9 in the morning to 9 at night is just a little more than I can take.
Is everyone on the floor vaccinated?
No. Most are.
See, that's the unfortunate. Well, then you know what? The unvaccinated should wear masks, and they should stay 6 feet apart.
Well, everybody wears a mask. We still do that. We are an abundance of caution. When you walk onto our campus, onto the state capitol campus, you put a mask on, and you leave it on. We still don't allow outside visitors in, and when we're on the floor, we are all masked. And it's difficult to debate because some people can't debate with the mask on. One poor guy.
You lose your ability for expression.
One poor guy from the very beginning, he's sort of like a Trump protester. He would always do this with his mask, pull it down, pull it down, pull it down. And the speaker, who's a big, giant guy, says, Mr. So-and-so, the mask. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. And he lifted it back up and then 2 minutes later, it'd be back down again. But listen,
I'm of the mindset that if I'm going into an establishment for the first time since the mask mandate was lifted, I'll wear a mask.
Until you know
then
the
I'll
lay of
ask,
the land.
what is your policy? And then once they tell you the policy.
Greg, that's my policy is wear a mask. And
well, I understand.
I forgot it that day.
That's a mandate, okay, on the floor. But Hannaford.
No, I mean even Hannaford.
Does Hannaford still require?
No.
Okay, so
most people don't require it, but I just think in this to the point where I don't want to make anybody else feel uncomfortable, feel unsafe.
It makes sense.
It's just sort of a courtesy. No shirts, no shoes, no service, no mask, right? So we'll see what happens. I think maybe as the warmer weather comes around, people just don't want to wear the mask in 90 degrees.
Well, it does make you feel warmer. It's a little bit to overcome. It's harder to breathe.
My biggest problem in the Capitol was I climbed the stairs. I usually take the stairs to my office, 7 floors. I usually take the stairs to the Assembly chamber, which is theoretically 3 floors, but in actuality, it's the equivalent of about 9 floors because they're giant sets of stairs. And with the mask, I am out of breath by the middle of the first set of stairs.
Yeah, it's.
I've been taking the elevator.
Yeah, it is hard, but
good for you doing the steps though.
I wish I can show you 10 pounds that are because I wasn't in session this year. Well, I wasn't in the Capitol.
Actually, part of the Capitol experience is the stairs, though.
Oh yeah, especially in the Capitol itself with those stone stairs.
Oh my God!
Well, many times when I went up with our association for our lobby day, I had an appointment over in the Capitol, or after we got done, because it was a half a day, and then we had lunch. I'd go over there and I'd walk from those stairs right to the top. And I hate elevators.
I've had well, I don't hate them, but I choose not to use them unless they're necessary. And escalators are the same thing. I once got stuck on an escalator between floors. I was there for 45 minutes waiting for help. You got it. You get it. A lot of people don't get that joke. Anyway, so
oh boy.
So back to the stairs at the Capitol. There's the $1 Million Staircase, which is, of course, gorgeous, and even more gorgeous now because my friend and former colleague Jack McEnany oversaw the renovation of the Capitol, and one of the things he insisted upon was the reopening of the skylight over the $1 Million Staircase, which had been painted over for World War II. And Jack reopened it after the year 2000. So for over 50 years, that hall has been a dark, dank place. And now with the skylight, it's beautifully lit. It feels beautiful when you're in there. And it does such a wonderful job of lighting the sculptures that are actually the walls of the Capitol. I also enjoy the other two staircases, the ones on the other side of the building. They are, for the want of a better term, more intimate. But they're also grand. When you climb those staircases, you get a view of each floor, and it's a magnificent view. When you're on the when you're on the $1 Million Staircase, that dominates. That's what you're thinking about. But I said to someone, the day I walk into that chamber and don't feel awe is the day I'm going to pack
retire,
it in.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is inspiring.
It's a great place.
And,
very, very, very.
One of the most
very
beautiful
fun.
Capitol. I mean, from the outside, not so much, but from the inside, it's one of the most beautiful capitals in the country that I've seen. I've seen about a dozen, and many of them look like conference centers. Some of them are also ornate. Some of them look like national capitals, but ours is unique. Ours is very European. It took a long, long time to build. It went through 2 fires, one fire that devastated the building completely, and it's just a pretty amazing looking place, with one exception. In all due respect, because I happen to like their product, but I don't like the idea that there's a Dunkin' Donuts right in the middle of it.
Well, it stands out because it's
Sure
so
it does.
inconsistent with the rest of the building. Another building in Albany that I've come to appreciate much more is the Smith Building.
Oh, yeah.
The ceilings there really are unique, and that has its own element of grandeur.
If I had my way, that would be where my office was, but we don't have offices. We don't have assembly offices there anymore. There may be 1 or 2 Senate offices there. There's believe it or not, there's 2 Senate offices in the Capitol.
Is there really?
Oh my God!
Is that the leadership?
No. It's actually the finance chair has an office. Liz Kruger. I don't know if she kept it there, but when you go to visit her office, you go through this labyrinth. And by the time you get there, you just say, please don't have a fire. Please don't have a fire, because there's just no way out. But it's tucked away in the middle of nowhere. Jim Seward, my colleague who chaired the insurance committee, also had a Capitol office.
I've been in his office before.
Yeah. And that's a different feeling, too. But
you hit the nail on the head. Uniqueness. There's a uniqueness to the building. There's a uniqueness to the offices in the Capitol building. Yeah. You go into the LOB and the offices are just offices.
That's right.
Except
the main hall of the LOB is pretty grand, with the 3-story atrium and the waterfall and all the other stuff. That's pretty nice. But go ahead.
Another awesome building, the state ed building, state education building.
Yeah.
That's another. A lot of great, awesome buildings in right in that Capitol District.
Well, because
area.
I'm old, the state ed building was the museum. When we went on school trips, that's where the state museum was. And now the State Museum is at the opposite end of the campus. It's on part of the Empire State Plaza. But the State Education Museum used to be the first floor of that building when you walked in. And I had reason to go to visit the Board of Regents, I'm going to say maybe 3 years ago. Maybe it was longer. And it was the first time I'd been in the building since I went there on a school trip.
Really?
And it's like, I remember, like I can actually remember the wood. It was pretty cool. But that's my view.
The architecture's consistent on the inside, that Gothic revival.
A little bit. It's pretty grand. It's pretty staid. Night at the museum, the inside there. That's what that place was looking like when I was
very
a kid.
Museum-like.
Right.
Yeah.
And but it's the view from when we sit in our conference out the window. And trust me, when we're sitting in our conference for 8 hours, I spend a lot of time looking out the window. I also get a great view of the Capital Region. You get a view straight up the river, and from where I sit on the edge of the Democratic Conference Room, and I can see the weather coming. I see the Berkshires from where I sit. But I also every day see the flagpole next to the state education building, and too many times it's flown at half mast, and I usually make it my practice to go find out why, because sometimes you don't know. Sometimes it's a police officer was killed in Buffalo on the side of the highway, and that's why they lowered it, or a former state official, or there was a mass shooting someplace, and there's a whole variety of reasons why they do it, but it's half mast way too much.
It has been over the last
18 months.
15, 18 months.
Yeah, it feels like it hasn't been full staff at all.
Right.
But
so I heard you talking about the pot shops. I visited a couple. I make it my habit to do that when I go out of state too. I visited a couple a few weeks ago. I did not know they didn't. No, I'm only kidding. I was in the.
I think the impact of us legalizing is going to impact those shops as well.
Well, the ones on the border,
Massachusetts.
ones on the border, but I was actually in eastern Massachusetts, and it's a little bit different there, but it is similar in that when the doors open, there's a line outside. It is similar in that it is still a very intimate, sort of almost pharmaceutical, but more holistic pharmacy, more organic pharmacy experience where you speak one-on-one to someone who knows what they're people. I like, how did you get so much knowledge in such a short time about marijuana? And then I find out, no, they've known about it their whole lives. But I was in Cape Cod.
Yeah, I shared what you just described, though. There's a local Saugerties resident who's been involved in marijuana across the country and has a pretty substantial presence in Colorado, California, and Michigan. And when I was speaking with him, the emotion that I started to experience was when I'm dealing with wine salesmen at the restaurant, and they have this deep knowledge of the wine.
They knew the wine.
Yeah, and he's talking about different blends, and I'm just like looking at him going, I just thought it was pot. I didn't know there was anything different about any of it. And branding has become a big component of it as well. I'm like,
what's striking me more than anything is the normalization of it. The very fact that people talk about it as they would talk about a glass of wine after dinner, as they would talk about their night routine, as people are taking it responsibly, and it's all adult. I quite honestly, I wouldn't know what's going on with kids because I don't talk to them, but I hope that they're not being sucked into this whole thing, and we're going to take steps in New York to make sure that doesn't happen. But the shop that I was in, who happened to be in Wellfleet, was the former general store, and I resented that. Because I really was like, why can't we have more general stores? There were, 2 years ago to this year, there were no marijuana shops that I knew of on the Cape 2 years ago. They are every 10 feet now. They're everywhere. In little tiny Wellfleet, what is the population? 5,000, maybe in the summer it's 10,000. There were 3-4 shops within 2 miles of each other.
So that is something, because we have the responsibility to zone this, so to speak. And my concern would be a density that makes all the shops unsuccessful economically.
Well, I think they all appeal to different groups. So I was talking to people, because I'm ignorant, I can't go into the reasons why, but let's just say I don't have any familiarity with marijuana whatsoever. But I talked to people who did. And they curated for me the 3 or 4 shops within a couple of miles of Wellfleet because we were going to go visit one. And They said, oh, that one doesn't have a very good selection. That one is sort of geared toward, more leaning toward the medical side. So they've chosen niches already, which is kind of interesting. The one we went into was a general shop, and unlike Washington State, the other place where I looked at marijuana stores, they are allowed to sell within the store some paraphernalia. They had T-shirts for sale, which I thought was wild because
Is that allowable under ours?
I don't know. I don't know.
Was or was not.
But it's not allowable in Washington State. Washington State, the gift shop was separate, and they did have a gift shop. This store took your debit card, where in Washington State you had to use your debit card outside and go to an ATM and get cash. But they took your debit card inside the shop there, which I thought was
That's unique because there's banking parts.
Huge
to
banking issues. Something I've been working on for a year and a half, and without great success so far, of developing. I would like to develop a public bank for New York State with a limited life to serve only those communities that can't be served by our commercial banking network, or by our mutual savings banks, or by our savings and loans, or by our credit unions. And there's a whole big swath of them. Anybody who can't get a Social Security card because of their immigration status. Marijuana dispensaries can't use banks that are involved with the federal government. That may change in the next 12 months. I honestly suspect it will. But
there's an inevitability to it.
There is.
The political parties can align to do something productive is the question mark.
Yeah. But I read your revenue estimate of $50,000 to $60,000. That means you're anticipating between $1 and $2 million of annual revenue from marijuana?
Yes. You think I'm underestimating?
Oh, I think you're way underestimating.
Really?
Do you? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's going to be. I think if each store does $1 million, that would be a low number, and you're probably going to have 3 or 4. But as I say, they're going to serve different populations. You're going to have get off the thruway, going to Woodstock for the weekend, going to Hunter Mountain for the weekend, going away camping with my family at North Lake, whatever. You're going to have the people who have decided to make it part of their recreational or their relaxation experience in your own community. That might not be the same store out on the thruway exit. You may have another one that does, like I said, with the ones at Wellfleet. You may have one that decides it's going to focus on the pharmacological aspects of it, and really. And by the way, that's the other part where it blows me away. Like you, I thought it was pot.
Yeah.
There's certain marijuana for certain purposes, and like within those purposes, there's certain blends, and that's also an interesting question.
It's
I never knew the difference. I got to be perfectly honest with you. Pot is pot, right?
Right.
No, it's not.
So it's going to be a interesting thing to kind of learn about.
I heard you talking about the lounge too, and I'm not really entirely familiar with that concept yet, but I understand that is it possible under the law where I know you've learned more about it than I knew. Yeah. We passed the enabling legislation, and now we're leaving it up to the experts to develop it.
Yeah, I kind of, one of the things I like about the law is it gave us a window to respond as local communities. And, we have the extreme choices to do nothing or to decide we don't want to do it at all or something in between. And from my perspective, I feel the responsible way is to do it in a way that is sensitive to people who may not like what's happening, but it also reflect that there's a percentage of our population that is welcoming this, and also to reflect this Sorgeries is a gateway, like you pointed out, to people maybe staying for the weekend or going to Woodstock or going to Hunter. And, there's an opportunity there economically, and we want to capitalize on that.
And Fred, let's be honest. If somebody is going to do those things where they're getting off the thruway and doing something recreational for the weekend, camping or going to Woodstock or going to Hits or whatever, and they can't get it in Sorgeries, it's not like they're not going to bring it with them. It's not like it's not going to be. It'll be existent. But
we're better having it done in an open way legally than we are. The legacy market is there, and there's people happy to fill those voids where they.
And here's what's going to happen with that: the quality control, the portion control, the regulation of legal marijuana will ultimately drive the illegal market out of business just because the product will be better.
Yes.
And I don't mean just, get you more high. It will be more predictable. It will be more specific to what you want, and you will know that it was done in a clean environment.
And you can feel confident. We all live in fear of opioids, and it's become a common practice. And
spice it up,
Yeah, with fentanyl of all things. So you're killing people.
So the next issue, and we got a break right now, but the next issue on the horizon with marijuana is, in the growing end, it is consuming 1.2% of all the electricity in Massachusetts right now.
Is it really?
It is using the equivalent of the electricity for 100,000 homes, and growing. And there's the question about the carbon footprint of the marijuana industry, and that's going to have to be addressed. Actually, I'm going to take it up with staff right after session is over, and we're going to try to put together a package of bills to acknowledge it and to deal with it. But we can deal with it. We can make it fix. We can make it work. But
all righty, listeners, we're at the bottom of the hour exactly, and we'll be back in a few.
You're listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM, and also online at mykcr.org.
Many medicines used to treat colds and flu contain acetaminophen, a pain reliever and fever reducer found in hundreds of over-the-counter and prescription medicines. But taking too much or more than one medication containing acetaminophen per day can damage your liver. So always read the label and don't take acetaminophen if you drink 3 or more alcoholic drinks every day. To learn more, visit fda.gov/OTC pain info. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Food and Drug Administration.
There was this one time I went snorkeling in the Caribbean when I was a kid. It really just blew my mind. We saw the most beautiful corals. I remember thinking they were waving at us as they moved with the ocean. And then there were all these amazing fish. I'll never forget it. It completely changed the way I look at the ocean.
Most of us have a memory of being in nature we'll never forget. Let's protect the world's natural places so more memories can be made for generations to come. Visit worldwildlife.org.
Have you ever experienced a wish come true? For a child battling a critical illness, a wish come true can be a turning point. One song, one dance, one game, one adventure, one moment changes everything. Make-A-Wish needs your support to grant the wish of every eligible child. Visit wish.org now to help grant more life-changing wishes. Together, we can transform lives, one wish at a time.
Someone in your town, at your school, or where you work is suffering from Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. They're dealing with excruciating pain and days when they can't even get out of bed. Chances are someone you know has Crohn's or colitis. Someone like me. I'm Amy Brenneman, and I'm asking you to support the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America to help millions of us cope and to find cures. Visit ccfa.org today to learn more. Help someone you know get back to their lives at ccfa.org.
Hi, this is Jim Quigley, Supervisor of the Town of Ulster, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
This portion of Kingston Community Radio is brought to you by Ulster Savings Bank. Visit their newest branch, conveniently located at the Ulster Commons Plaza in Lake Katrine. Experience the difference that local community banking offers with the convenience of another great location, easy access, plenty of parking, and a 24-hour ATM. Ulster Savings Bank, invested in community, invested in you. Member FDIC.
Thank you, Lawrence, and we are back. Welcome back, listeners and viewers who have been with us this morning. Those just joining us for this last half hour, welcome. 331-9255 is our call-in number. We'd love to hear from you. We have State Assemblyman Kevin Cahill in the studio and Town Supervisor from Saugerties, Fred Costello.
So we didn't provoke any phone calls with our half-hour discussion of marijuana. So maybe
Nope.
maybe I should go through some county business here.
There you go.
Get some people interested.
So let's go over the COVID numbers first. And I don't know if you did this earlier.
No, we've been
37 active cases in Ulster County. 114 active cases in Dutchess County. Watch that number. It's dropping like a rock. 95,267 fully vaccinated people in Ulster County. That's 53%. 70% of the people have received some vaccination in Ulster County. 100.
Wait a minute. So 53% fully vaccinated, 70% one?
Yes.
That's encouraging news.
Dutchess County, 140,451 fully vaccinated at 47%. That number has also changed. Both of these numbers are a little higher now. So the vaccination site for Ulster County, the main vaccination site, moved. That was in the paper today, that it's moving from the Ulster County Fairgrounds to the Stone Ridge campus of SUNY Ulster at the end of the month. So things are looking good. The governor has indicated, and I promised Colleen that we would have a member of our staff call her back with specifics for restaurants, and maybe you know, Fred, you're in the business. The governor has pledged that when the entire state is 70% vaccinated, he's going to end all emergency restrictions.
We were closing in yesterday on 69%.
Right. So Colleen's question was, when that happens, does that, or even before that happens, what are the rules for restaurants? Are you still required to do the distancing? Do you still have to put up barriers, all that other stuff? Your staff has to be masked, or can you open up?
We've been free largely to open up. Even the current capacity restraints, those
what are they? 75.
Yeah. But for me to have more than 75% capacity is rare. Because, if I have a booth that can support 4 people.
2 people are in it.
2 people sit in it, yeah. And that's more likely the scenario than we're going to be every booth filled to capacity, every table filled to capacity. So the capacity restraints are not compromising. People's confidence to come back out is gradually coming back. Mm-hmm. But it's not fully back yet.
And spacing is...
and we've still maintained at every opportunity to kind of go every other table.
Required, or is that just a policy?
We've been doing it just so people feel comfortable, because I find that amongst the folks that were loyal to social distancing when it was required, they still have a level of discomfort. So if I don't know you well, I don't want to sit 2 feet away from you not knowing if you're vaccinated or anything else.
I actually, we were in a restaurant, like a mall restaurant in Connecticut about 6 months ago, and it was gigantic. It was one of those enormous mall restaurants, and we're like, oh, we'll be okay here, right? And we walked in, and they sat us down at a cluster, and there were people on all 4 sides of us, and we finally said, can we move?
Yeah.
And that was before vaccines were prevalent. So
I really like what Kevin Hinchy and the Sorgity Stallions instituted with vaccinated and non-vaccinated. I don't know if I know you've been up to the deck, the stable club, but as you enter through the ticket booths at the grandstand, if you're vaccinated, you go to the left. If you're non-vaccinated, you have to go to the right. And that even means Sorgaty's residents, Sorgaty's fans, will need to sit on the visitor's side, socially distancing.
So we just had a piece of legislation that was somewhat controversial. It probably generated more mail, more email than anything that I can recall for the longest time. I'll just give you an example. My staff would leave the office on or around 5 o'clock, and when they would return the next morning, there would be at least 300 emails on the subject. I cleaned it out one morning at 7 o'clock, and by 9 o'clock, there was another 250 emails in it.
And this was on what?
Well, I'll tell you in a minute.
Okay.
But, only 2 of them out of every several hundred were from constituents. Everything else was from around the state. But the issue was the registration of vaccinations, and whether people would be required to have their information about their vaccinations entered into a central registry. And the concept was that we are developing medical records, transportable medical records for everyone. And right now, because people are maybe seeing a different provider than they would usually see, or maybe using a pharmacy more regularly than they did, or their medical practice changes hands, having that information in a central place enables whoever is their provider to know fully and completely just what their history was. And the law was mandatory. And I serve on the health committee, and the chair of the health committee was willing to sit down and talk to me and discuss a possible amendment, and we were able to get an amendment. I understand there are people that have legitimate reasons for not wanting to have that information entered, but if it were just a matter of public health, which it is to have the larger number of registry, I would say, your individual rights have to take a backseat to the public health.
I agree.
I always say that.
100%.
However, since it was an issue of private health, since it was an issue of how your health care gets better, I felt that people should have the option to not have that information recorded. So we added what I called the right to be stupid option. You can have the option. You're allowed to take your name off the registry and not have it put in there. Now, other people didn't like it because they thought it was Big Brother. They thought it was Orwellian. They thought it was the first step toward a government controlling us. But the reality was it was intended to be to help individuals' health care. And if you don't want the help, you're a grown-up. You shouldn't have to have it, right? So we did pass that law. I think both sides were very, very happy at the end because we anticipate that the people that wrote to us are the people that won't register. And that's going to amount to it. Although it was the biggest number of letters, emails that I got, they were sending them to everyone. So there are just several thousand people that don't want to register.
And the majority of them were ones you feel that did not want to be on the registry?
Absolutely. They didn't want there to be a mandatory registry. And part of it was being ginned up on some of the news channels as being the big left-wing conspiracy. It was a continuation of everything we heard.
Drives me crazy.
Well, it doesn't drive me crazy because people are processing, right? And I always found it appropriate, Greg, in this business to find those people who are saying the things that I most don't understand and listen to them more intently, because that's how you start to understand your own position better. And sometimes they ping you. I was a co-sponsor of the bill that was mandatory, but then a light went off in my head and I said, wait a second, this is not about public health, it's about private health. We can accommodate both. And with that, the sponsor agreed to make an amendment. A couple of other bills that we're working on.
Hold on, before you go on to other bills. You just read numbers, and you made a comment, the numbers are dropping like a rock. That's all a result of the vaccine. It's all a result of the vaccine.
Significant result of the vaccine. There's other factors too. I think.
Oh
some
yeah,
of
there are.
The
All right, let me
measures.
rephrase it. The primary factor is the vaccine. Now we just heard of this Delta variant in India that's starting to take over, and it's targeting the 5 or 12 to 20-year-olds primarily. Mm-hmm. It's very, very clear, and I just can't understand the thinking of some people. And some of these people are my friends I've had these conversations with. You have a family, and you have kids, and you refuse to get vaccinated, and you refuse your children to get vaccinated. Right. God forbid, if you got COVID or your kids got COVID, you weren't vaccinated, and you ended up very sick or in the hospital, or even worse, we hear every single day how many New Yorkers have died as a result of COVID. Yeah, now it's drastically reduced. I think there was 13 or 17 yesterday. How does an individual feel knowing that they could have got fully vaccinated, and now they've got COVID, and now they've given it to their kids? They might be in the hospital. I just can't understand that line of thinking.
So I want to disagree with you to a
that's fine.
significant extent on the main point, and that is that the vaccines are even primarily responsible. I don't think they are. I think it's a combination of factors that no single one is wholly or largely responsible for. We have to go back to the beginning. There is this sense that we all want to think that the quarantine, the masking, the sanitation, the closing of businesses was to protect us individually. It was not. It was to protect our healthcare system that was being overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Our healthcare system could not handle the volume. So we had to do something, which now sounds cliche, flatten the curve. We had to reduce the number of infections over the immediate period of time. And then at the same time, a vaccine was being developed that allowed for people to get sick, but not as sick, not to require hospitalization. So the vaccine is a factor. The quarantining was a factor. The sanitation was a factor. The masking certainly was a factor. The fact that the disease ran its course, or is running its course. It's a year and 4 months later. It's running its course. It probably would have subsided a little bit anyway at this point. There's also the fact that a significant number of people have already been affected, and those who would be most affected by it have already been most affected by it, the elderly and the frail, the ones who were most susceptible of getting sick. So the good news is we're through this. We're almost through this completely. And yes, vaccines were a significant part of it and remain a significant part of it. But unlike other vaccines where where deadly diseases and debilitating diseases ran through our population and caused devastation, particularly amongst children, this vaccine is really just helping us as one little booster to get back to day-to-day life. I encourage everybody to get the vaccine. I'm not a doctor. I can't tell them. They should talk to their doctor if they have an issue with it. But people who object to vaccines generally fall into two categories. There's the category that has a philosophical or religious objection to it because they don't want to introduce particularly vaccines that are grown on live entities into their bodies.
I understand.
Then there are people who have a medical reason, who believe that it's injurious to their health. And in that category gets subdivided by those who are just sort of, they just think everything, and those who are truly legitimately concerned. And then the other category is the people with a deep-seated religious belief. And I will relate a story about a very well-known Kingston person who had deep-seated religious beliefs and who was at the end of his life. He was very sick. And I met him at the end of his life. And I said, "It's such a pleasure and an honor to meet you. I'm sorry that you're sick, and I hope you get well." And he says, "Well, I probably won't." And he said, "Because my religion prohibits me from getting the care that I need to get well. And I know that would help me get well, but it violates the tenets of my religion. And I have to choose between my health and my faith, and I choose my faith." That is an intelligent decision that is made. It is not sort of like the panic that I'm hearing from people that say, "I have a religious objection because I think vaccines are going to hurt my kids." And that's a whole different story. There is a lot of vaccine anxiety out there.
So you talk about meeting with folks that have a different perspective and understanding, and certainly I harbor my faith, especially when my life is in crisis. But that argument would not enter my mind ever.
Right.
I would have a difficult time.
I get it.
Yeah.
Listen, he said, "I'm sacrificing my life for my faith." And he's a grown human. It's a grown human being who made an intelligent decision based upon a rational set of thoughts. If you agree that religion is a rational set of thoughts,
I do,
and I do too. And he reached that conclusion after careful and deliberate thought. He wasn't operating under a delusion. He wasn't operating under a false sense that, somehow this vaccine is going to, sully my body. It was just his faith said not to do it. And when people would come into me and talk about the fact that they needed a moral or religious objection, I would relate that story to them. I said, "Does that fit in your category?" And the answer was invariably no. Mm-hmm. Invariably, the answer was no, it will hurt my child. I said, "Well, that's not religious. Don't rely on your internet medical degree. Go talk to a doctor. Go talk to people who know what they're talking about." So we're having this. Actually, I stay very close with many of my friends. Believe it or not, I know it's going to be impossible for many people to know this, but from my high school class, and there's doctors among us. There's epidemiologists among us. And there's people who don't believe in vaccines among us. And, of course, we talk amongst ourselves. And I had a conversation a few days ago with one of my classmates who was, "This whole vaccine thing is crazy. No way, no way, no way." And I said, "Did you happen to talk to so-and-so and so-and-so?" Yeah. They have a whole different view. It's like, yeah. So we have, even within our little circle, we have this divergence of views. So
I have that in my own friend
family,
group.
right?
Absolutely.
And, I was going to say
one of my close friends who is bright. I mean, there's no taking it away. Whose mom is in a maintenance program for an illness that was life-threatening, and he won't get vaccinated. He goes to visit her every week, and I'm like, "What are you thinking?" I'm like, "You great. You don't want to do it, but going home, that's insanity."
Vaccine was heaven sent for us. Those of us who wanted to visit our mom. My siblings and I, we couldn't really visit her. Now the vaccines made it possible to visit her, and now the vaccines are making it possible for us to visit her without masks, and that is the best. What a huge! So let me go over a few other things real quick. we were talking about the emergence of cannabis dispensaries, but we already have places that dispense otherwise illegal drugs, and those are called pharmacies, independent pharmacies. They're not illegal if that pharmacy is distributing them, and I think very few people would suggest that there's a moral issue with a pharmacy, but there is a very significant issue with pharmacies today, and that issue revolves around whether the independent community pharmacy can continue to exist. And we've taken several steps to make sure that's possible. Last week I did a rally with independent pharmacists from across the state, the first rally I've attended in the Capitol in the whole since the pandemic began, and we did pass once again the pharmacy benefit manager regulatory bill that will allow the state Department of Financial Services to regulate the unregulated pharmacy benefit management industry, which has been crippling our independent pharmacies. So we did that, and then we did several others, but I'll let Greg introduce the call.
We've got a caller. Good morning, caller. You're on the air with Kingston Community Radio.
Kevin, I have a question. Somewhere, what happened to the HIPAA laws that our medical information is private?
So if you're talking about the vaccine registry and the HIPAA laws, HIPAA is mentioned, and for people who are not familiar, federal law prohibits the sharing of medical information with anyone without the permission of the patient and also specifically for medical purposes. HIPAA is weaved entirely through the law. All of the safeties in this and the precautions that are placed in HIPAA remain. My good friend John McDonald, who is a pharmacist by profession up in Cohoes, talked about that extensively. He said there's nothing in our law that would require vaccine registrations that would compromise HIPAA or the privacy of any patient. You must submit the information, and every person who has custody of that information is still bound by HIPAA, and only people that have a legitimate reason for that information have custody of that information. So HIPAA is totally protected under this law. And as I say, as a result of a late amendment to the bill, if you choose not to participate in it, then you can opt out altogether.
You want to run my? You kind of lost me there in that last statement.
Oh, I said under the registry law that we ultimately passed, every individual has the right to opt out. So
if someone asks me if I have been vaccinated, I do not have to tell them?
You know what? If somebody asks you if you've been vaccinated, you don't have to tell them, and unfortunately, you can tell something that's less than true. You can say you were when you're not. We're hoping you don't. The purpose of the registry is not to verify the veracity of your statement. The purpose of the registry is to provide a means by which there can be continuity of care for you and your individual health. But no, we're on the honor system. You can get a card. I have a card. Where you can demonstrate it to those who don't wish to accept our word. And there are certain circumstances where it will be required. For example, when you're getting on an airplane and you're going to be in a closed space, you're going to have to prove that you have been vaccinated for a while. There may be other circumstances, as Greg was talking about earlier, sporting events. There's places where they will require you to present some level of proof. Another bill we just passed in the Health Committee, and I think it was in the Health Committee and probably will be on the floor very soon, is a law. I voted against it, but for a different reason. That would prohibit. That would make a felony out of creating a false vaccine card. The reason I voted against it is because it was a felony. I thought that it was kind of overkill for that particular offense. I don't think that it should go without sanction.
Lawyers lie all the time.
What's that?
Lawyers
lie all the time. Right, exactly. So my hope is that people will continue to be honorable, and people will continue to be courteous, and that we will continue to get healthier. And the numbers in Ulster County and Dutchess County and around New York State are proving that to be the case. Not so in some other countries. We're seeing the numbers go through the roof in Brazil, where they have not introduced the vaccination and they have not taken measures to be safe. We're seeing even in England, where there has been some vacillation on what to do. In some parts of Europe, there have been devastation. And, of course, in some parts of the third world and places like India, once again, this disease that has caused a great deal of discomfort and dislocation in the industrialized world is causing devastation in those places. So we're not out of the woods, but we're getting there.
Brazil
Now,
has really
I have
been
a
a
question
poster
for what
child
you
for
said.
how not to handle it. They've done it.
You can't get on a plane if you have not been vaccinated?
I believe that's the case. I can't speak with any
Here,
authority.
I'll explain the plane thing because I flew last month. When you go, I flew out of Albany and went to Fort Lauderdale, and I went through Baltimore. When you get to the TSA counter to hand them your driver's license, they will ask you if you've been vaccinated. You can pull out your COVID card or do what me and Greg have. You can have a barcode on your phone. Once they scan it, you're in the TSA system as having a vaccine. They'll never ask you for your card again.
But if you don't have a card and you don't have the app,
Then you can have what Greg has. You can have the
what if
the
you don't have
barcode.
either? You can't get on the plane, right?
No, you can fly on the plane, but then you have to fill out the travel health advisory and quarantine for 14 days when you get home.
Gotcha. So
But
that's your
But
answer.
I took off from Albany at 6 a.m. They scanned, they wrote down my card. I had the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Flew to Baltimore, which was only an hour. When we were boarding the plane in Baltimore to go to Fort Lauderdale, they were calling out names or whatever. And this was, still a month and a half ago. It was it was the weekend of the Kentucky Derby. By the time I got to Baltimore, I was already in the system as having a vaccine. Wow. That's how quick it went. So you give them your card one time, and you're good.
There you go. Well,
But if you don't have a card, then you're not good.
I guess
no, you can fly. You're just going to have to fill out the New York State Travel Advisory Health Form upon returning to New York, and you're going to get a call from the Department of Health every day, asking you if you have these 18 symptoms or whatever. It's just better to go out and get the shot and get back to normal. That's my personal opinion.
Well, thank you for your call. We do appreciate it, and you have yourself an awesome day.
Well, health reasons for not getting this shot, then that's the way it is. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks, Paula. It's up to people's choices, though. If they don't want to get the shot, that's up to them. I understand it's a personal thing. I just think, personally, you should get the shot.
No, when you're in a close proximity, especially on an airplane, boy, I'd be a little bit nervous knowing that there's especially an unvaccinated person sitting.
Well, there will be. I mean, there inevitably will be, because there'll be children on the plane and they can't be vaccinated.
All right, I take that back. Adults.
Right.
Adults.
You also have to wear your mask from the moment you step into the airport until you get out in the curb to your final destination.
One thing I want to
If you take
point
the
out,
thing off, you're going to get screamed at, or 8 people will come up to you and say, "Put your mask on."
one of the things I want to point out, because this is the first time I'm ever recognizing a public health crisis being politicized and being considered an us and them condition. Those of us who are in the business of writing regulations and laws don't do well by getting too far ahead of the public. If we do things that the public doesn't want, sooner or later it's going to come back to bite us. And the regulations that we've advanced, including giving the governor emergency powers to do things that we could not do automatically as a legislature, were things that the public really asked for. And to this day, I'm going to say that the public is still ahead of government in terms of what they would like as restrictions and safety measures. So I understand there are people that don't agree, and they may be even a large minority. But I think by and large that we're acting in the way that the public would want us to. We will examine this experience and then maybe come up with different ways to approach it, maybe handle it differently in the future. Hopefully we will. I just read about the smallpox plague. And the expectation in the middle of smallpox was that life expectancy would go down over the next 50 years. Instead, life expectancy rose by about 20 years in the next 50 years, in some part because of the things we learned from that. So before we go, I just want to tell you we're wrapping up session this week, our official session. We fully expect, given the circumstances, to be called back several times. during the off session, but we've been basically I'll be leaving here, going straight into a Ways and Means Committee meeting, and then we'll continue right on through till about 10:30 or 11 o'clock tonight, maybe a little later tonight. And tomorrow night I expect to be there overnight. Wow. But this will be the end of the session as we know it.
Is there any grand, so to speak, legislation that may make it up for a vote?
Well, we are dealing with other parts of the criminal justice system over the past several days, and yesterday we dealt with, we're trying to put our arms around some of the issues pertaining to gun violence which doesn't exist just in New York State. And with all due respect to my colleagues who were opposed to this legislation, they are drawing a correlation between the change in the bail laws and the gun violence that occurs, but that doesn't explain the other 49 states where it's happening to an even greater extent. So we want to get our arms around it. We want to fix it. But that and getting ready to come back and deal with the governor's situation is probably fairly high on our minds right now.
State Assemblyman Kevin Cahill, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy, hectic schedule. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you, Fred Costello. Supervisor Town of Saugerties, thank you, Lawrence, and most importantly, thank you, listeners. We'll be right back here next Wednesday.